All right, well, I want to welcome everybody again. And for those who just joined us, welcome. Thank you for coming. Welcome to a program that is the culmination of at least 1.5 years worth of work, the brainchild of the indefatigable Jackie Gamache, and an effort that has survived the pandemic so that we all may share in We Are the Tree of Life. My name is Ryan Isaac. I am the Director of Cultural Arts at the San Diego Center for Jewish Culture at the Lawrence Family JCC Jacobs Family Campus. Just a note, due to the size of today's gathering, everybody is muted. Please do mute yourself if you're not speaking and you find that your mute is off. And if you have any questions or comments during the proceedings, please feel free to use the chat function. There are a few of us who are going to be monitoring the chat regularly, so you'll be able to communicate with today's speakers that way. We have many people to thank today. I want to start by thanking our friends and partners at the Leachtag Foundation, the Jewish Federation of San Diego County, the USC Shoah Foundation Institute, Holocaust Center of Pittsburgh, Art of Elan, Timeline Studios, and ADL San Diego. Special thanks also to artist and activist Lynn Cabot and producer Clint Burkett. A tremendous thank you to Kate Hatmaker, who has been an integral part of We Are the Tree of Life from the beginning, and she has poured unquantifiable amounts of time, love, passion, and energy into this project. Thank you, Kate. Today, thank you also to today's honored guest, special guest, Dr. Edith Eger. We greatly appreciate your participation, Dr. Eger, and we will hear more about her in a moment. Today, we are screening a short film that formally announces the We Are the Tree of Life Performing Arts Project. Featured in the film is Dr. Eger's life story as a dancer. Following the film, there will be a conversation between Lauren Bairnsfather, who is the director of the Holocaust Center of Pittsburgh, and Dr. Stephen Smith, executive director of the USC Shoah Foundation Institute. Of course, I want to thank Jackie Gamache. I am happy, very happy for Jackie that today her hard work and dedication is seeing the light of day and being shared with all of us. Jackie has always stressed to me the importance of the name, We Are the Tree of Life. She's always felt that this project belongs to all of us, and it is wonderful to see so many people come together as a community today. Now we will screen the film that will give a taste of the We Are the Tree of Life program. Thank you for being here.
My name is Jacqueline Gamache. We are the Tree of Life, a San Diego community-wide initiative. October 27, 2018, the massacre of the Tree of Life synagogue in Pittsburgh. I was horrified. Then I decided to educate my granddaughter, Yvette, 11 years old, on the Holocaust. At our last phone conversation, Yvette presented me with the tree. The idea was born, bringing back the performing arts, music, poetry, dance, literature, drawings, visual arts created by inmates in concentration camp and in ghettos during World War II. Their talents, their works, are today the message of their survival. In those days, music notes were silent. On this day, the music will be heard.
So carry on, my sweet survivor. Carry on, my lonely friend.
In those days, drawings were hidden and invisible. On this day, they will be seen. In those days, literature was voiceless. On this day, life stories, words, and poetry will be heard. I am the Tree of Life. You are the Tree of Life. We are the tree of life.
We're going to spend the next few minutes getting to know and exploring the lives of a few different artists and their experiences through the Holocaust. We're going to hear the music by Ilse Weber. We're going to see the drawings by Helga Weiss. And we're going to have a conversation with the dancer, Dr. Edith Egger. I myself am a dancer and a choreographer. And part of the power of art is it's a form of expression. And if you and I maintain the world a decent place, then we'll never have to know the horrors of the Holocaust. Because by focusing and trying to understand the creations of these artists, we can try and get a glimpse of what it was like for them and try to connect to it on a deeper level. Ilse Weber was a composer and a poet and an author to children's books. When she was in the camp of Terezin, and a few of the kids, including her son, were sent to Auschwitz, she volunteered to go along as well. And she was sent to the gas chamber. In the same ghetto that she was sent from, Ghetto Terezin, we're also going to see the artwork by Helga Weiss, and we're going to get an understanding of what it was like through her eyes as a child at that time. And lastly, we're fortunate enough to even hear a conversation with Dr. Edith Egger and understand what her experience was like and what the takeaways were. She was a dancer before the Holocaust, and during the Holocaust, the infamous Dr. Mengele came to the barracks and requested someone perform for him, and she did. She performed, and he rewarded her with a piece of bread. Now, the powerful element in her story is even under those circumstances, she took that bread and she shared it with the fellow inmates around her. And later on, when she was actually on the verge of death, those individuals came back and actually helped her survive. So even throughout the horrors of the Holocaust, there's a deep message of maintaining true to yourself and true to your humanity, and not letting any experience crush you.
Hello, my name is Dr. Stephen Smith. I'm the Executive Director of the USC Shoah Foundation, and I am delighted to welcome Dr. Edith Eva Eger, who is here as our special guest today. Dr. Eger, thank you for being with us.
I'm very happy to be part of this beautiful program about the dance of life. I'm still dancing myself. No matter what I do during the day, at night, I can be still dancing at the Budapest Opera House, just like I did in Auschwitz. I think it was very important to mention that unfortunately, none of us were really prepared to what came. We were told one thing and then we found another. We arrived and it said, Arbeit macht frei. And my father said, we're just going to work and go home. We had no idea that my parents are going to the gas chamber because everybody over 40, under 14, every young mother with a child went to the gas chamber.
This program, We Are the Tree of Life, is so encompassing because it's about who we all are, and the fact that the Holocaust happened and there was such loss and such destruction that you know so personally, and yet there is life that emerges out of that and that we can all be part of it. For you as a survivor, what does it mean to you as you think about the past and what has grown out of that past for you?
My tree was cut out, but the roots have traveled. Sometimes we don't appreciate what we have until it's taken away from us. And my freedom was taken away from me. So today, every moment is precious. I like to talk about joy, love, and most of all, passion for life. Do not ever give up. There is hope in hopelessness. There is a gift in everything.
I hope you all enjoyed that. I think you saw from the list of names and organizations that rolled by at the end, a lot of people, a lot of time, a lot of hands went into the creation and production of that film. And again, I'm just very happy that after all of the hard work of everybody behind it, that we were able to share that with all of you. You saw Stephen Smith in there. I'm going to turn things over to him momentarily. I want to tell you about him first. Dr. Stephen Smith is the Vinci Viterbi Endowed Executive Director of the USC Shoah Foundation. He is committed to making the testimony of survivors of the Holocaust and of other crimes against humanity a compelling voice for education and action. An adjunct professor of religion at USC, he's a theologian by training. Smith founded the UK Holocaust Center in England and co-founded the Aegis Trust for the Prevention of Crimes Against Humanity and Genocide. He was also the inaugural chairman of the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust, which runs the National Holocaust Memorial Day in the United Kingdom. Smith was the project director responsible for the creation of the Kigali Genocide Memorial Center in Rwanda and trustee of the South Africa Holocaust and Genocide Foundation. Smith, who holds the UNESCO Chair on Genocide Education, lectures widely on issues relating to his expertise. His publications include Never Again, Yet Again, a personal struggle with the Holocaust and genocide. In recognition of his work, Smith has become a member of the Order of the British Empire and received the Interfaith Gold Medallion. He also holds 2 honorary doctorates, Honorary Doctor of Letters from Nottingham Trent University and Honorary Doctor of Laws from the University of, I'll say Leicester, but I know he can say that better than I. Without further ado, let me turn it over, please, to Dr. Stephen Smith.
Well, thank you so much, Ryan. And it's Leicester, but it doesn't look like it says Leicester, so you absolutely can be forgiven for that. One day we'll actually learn to spell English properly and speak it even better. So welcome, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be with you here. And thank you, Jackie Gamache, for putting together that very moving and powerful short video to introduce us to the principles of We Are the Tree of Life. I'm joined today by 2 amazing women who are going to be in conversation right now. Dr. Lauren Bairnsfather, who's joining us from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Dr. Bairnsfather is executive director of the Holocaust Center of Pittsburgh, which she's been running since 2015. She has a master's in Holocaust memory and a PhD all about the end of the British rule in Palestine. And I would love to learn more about that from you, Lauren. I obviously have 2 different perspectives on that, and I would love to hear what you learned about that in your research. We are also joined today, as we saw in the film, by the wonderful Dr. Edith Eva Elephant Eger. I find it fascinating, Dr. Eger. You have 4 E's in your name, including your maiden name, and I'd always love to see you. It's so wonderful to see you here today. Dr. Eger is a native of Hungary, and in fact, she was just a teenager in 1944 when she and her family were sent to Auschwitz. And you may have read about some of that in her books, The Chosen and The Gift, The Choice and the Gift. Towards the end of the war, Dr. Eger and other prisoners were moved to Gunskirchen. And there on May the 4th, she had been left for dead. If it wasn't for a young American soldier who noticed her hand moving in the pile of corpses, we would not be here talking together today. She was pulled out of that pile of corpses and was given medical help and brought back right from the brink of death, and brings to us today through her work such amazing insights into life. In 1949, Dr. Eger and her husband moved to the United States. And in 1969, she got her first degree in psychology from the University of Texas, El Paso, and then pursued her doctoral internship at the William Beaumont Army Medical Center in Fort Bliss, Texas. I am sure you have read her books, and if you haven't, you will, because they are just delightful and insightful and powerful. And she is not only appearing on our Zoom here today, but you can catch her on a television station somewhere near you most days, because she really is. I have to tell you a wonderful story. I was talking to the chairman of the board of the Shoah Foundation, who is in Melbourne. And I was just telling her about Dr. Eger and what we were doing together. And she heard the voice of Dr. Eger from the back of the computer in the room while she was making tea. And she said, "That's not Dr. Eger, is it?" And there she was, a few minutes later, giving the most beautiful message to this lady who has a very difficult life. And she just literally recognized her voice in Melbourne. So it's wonderful to have you with us today, Dr. Eger, and thank you for all you've done, including the Shoah Foundation testimony that you gave many years ago, which we treasure and will always treasure. So thank you so much. So our conversation today, what I want to try and do is draw from that film that we saw just a few moments ago and talk about the relationship between art and trauma and life, actually. I'm going to start just with you, if it's okay for a moment, Lauren, if you don't mind me calling you Lauren. We met for the first time just last year And you're living in a community that has had in the last couple of years really been traumatized by the experiences of the Tree of Life synagogue, and after which this program is named. In your work in teaching about the Holocaust, how do you use the visual arts to engage students around matters to do with the Holocaust and what it means in their lives?
Well, we use the visual arts, we use the performing arts, basically any art that we can use, we want to use, because it's so engaging, and it is an instant emotional connection, which is not the same, but is about as close as we can get to hearing a survivor's testimony. So we use it quite often, and I had occasion to think about this a lot in the lead up to doing this program. And I thought about what the Holocaust Center of Pittsburgh did after October 27th of 2018, and it was 2 photography exhibits, and both of them started meaningful conversations. Now, I also want to say that inside Pittsburgh, we felt, and I certainly felt, that a lot of people were trying to represent for what happened at the Tree of Life building, where 3 congregations met in October of 2018. But I also feel like I'm not a member of those congregations, so I'm also to the outside of that experience. And I saw on the list of participants in this program right now, we have some people from that congregation. So I'm grateful for that. We definitely rely on art to make a connection with people who are learning about the Holocaust, yes, and also trying to process the experiences that we've had over the last several years.
Dr. Iga, you are an artist. We were learning about you as being a dancer, before you were in Auschwitz, and then the experience you had in Auschwitz, where you danced for Mengele. How do you bring together your love of the arts with your experience as a Holocaust survivor? Do those go together in any way for you?
I think without the arts, I wouldn't have survived, because during the day, I had to do exactly what I was told. I had to endure what I could not control. They could have thrown me in a gas chamber any minute, torture me. But they could never murder my spirit, because at night I was dancing, and they could not control that. And I had my own way. Oh, I was just watching that wonderful dancer. He's brilliantly doing many things. And I put everything into dancing. And what I did mostly, I brought my mother making a challah. And that was an art piece. I mean, I cannot tell you, to see my mother with that challah and everything else that I could see. I always remember that a girl next to me found a mirror, and it's amazing, in a latrine in Auschwitz, a mirror. And a few minutes later, not too much later, I passed her by, and she said to me, "I am Marie Antoinette in my boudoir." Our mind, our ways of thinking about what is happening, what we think, we create. And without being an artist, without waiting for me to meet my boyfriend who told me I have beautiful eyes and beautiful hands, and to be able to know that he and I are going to go to Palestine. We were in a bazaar. The art of living and loving and having passion in life. No Nazi could ever stop. Ever.
Lauren, when you hear Dr. Iga speaking about, that as an educator, what goes through your mind in terms of how you could take that story and share it more broadly with, the young people that you work with, for example?
Just the power of our imaginations, and the power that we have to approach the world in the way that we want to on our own terms. so powerful and so beautifully told.
Mm. Dr. Iga, I've an interesting little story to tell you. I'm interested personally in how narratives, how the story of the Holocaust has been told by those who lived it. And I think you and I in a previous conversation, I asked you, how was it? It was till 1989 until you published your first book. But I found a book recently that came out in 1952. It's really interesting. It's called Youth in Chains, and it came out in Jerusalem in English in 1952. So I got very interested in this book and tracked down the individual who wrote it. He's still alive and living in Israel today. His name is Thomas Jiv. What I didn't know was that he was about to publish another book, and it's called The Boy Who Drew Auschwitz. Just came out by HarperCollins. Must read, by the way. Now, what's fascinating is the testimony that he printed in 1952, the words are identical in this book that was published in 2021. But when the publisher came to publish the book in 1952, they refused to print his drawings, the 89 drawings that he drew in Auschwitz. And this little boy, 13 years old, got hold of the cement sacks. He was in the bricklaying commando, and he drew on the cement sacks using charcoal every day, and he documented his whole experience. The book and the photographs and the pictures are now out, and it was just I was reminded about that, how the dimension that he had, like the resilience that you were describing, that you continued to dance. I've never heard anybody say I was dancing at night. He was drawing at night in order to be able to tell his story. And what he was wanting to do, it turns out his father had gone to England to get safe passage for him and his mother. So his father was in London. He never got them out of Germany. And so he was drawing his experiences on a daily basis so that he could tell his father what he'd gone through. So this idea of the tree of life that Jackie's been bringing to us seems to be about bringing together our whole selves. And I was very much touched by, in your books, The Choice and the Gift, how you really kind of center ourselves in our lives through our experiences. Can you just talk to us a little bit about why you wrote those books and what you hope that they would achieve for us as we read them and navigate that complex world which you inhabited? I'm just asking you about The Choice and the Gift.
The Choice and the Gift. Why did you write those two books, and what are your hopes for those?
For many, many
everyone?
years, people asked me to write a book, and I said, I have nothing to say. I have nothing to say. And then Philip Zimbardo sat me down and said, Edie, the survivors who are famous are all men. We need a female voice. And that did it.
What year was that?
I am the female voice, but I'm not Viktor Frankl because he was in his 70s and I was a 16-year-old, a different time of our lives. And I had a boyfriend, and we had a tremendous meaning and purpose because we were very strong Zionists. And we were going to go to Palestine. We had purpose, we had meaning, we had a plan, we had a dream. And I found out that he was killed a day before liberation. I mean, I was with Zimbardo, Philip, who calls himself my baby brother and calls me a big sister. And we have been together in Budapest and lecturing together. But he asked me when I met him the first time when he was still a professor at Stanford. And I cannot tell you, but it was sometime, maybe 80s or 90s, I don't remember anymore. But I made him chicken paprikash, and I traveled with it on the plane. And my daughter said, I never met a psychologist who is bringing chicken paprikash to a colleague. And so food was what we talked about in Auschwitz. And I was with Abraham Maslow, and I definitely believe in a way that when you're hungry, all you talk about is food. And we would fight how much caraway seeds you put in a goulash, and whether you put green pepper or red pepper, and we would have these conversations. And we also had a boob contest. Guess who won?
Of course you did. And what was the book contest?
Well, we stood there, and remember, I was 16, a ballet student, and I am there and my all together. And another thing I'm going to share with you that I really don't share, but today is just one of those days. I've been talking since 8 o'clock in the morning. I went from Budapest to Ukraine and so on. But when I was in Mauthausen and we go up the steps, all I saw was body parts. And I said, here I came to die. And at night, I'm ashamed to tell you, I went outside to look at man, so I would know how a man looks like before I die. My curiosity really helped me to survive.
Mm.
I wanted to know what's going to happen next. I still do.
Lauren, when you when we're thinking about remember, you're think a lot about memory, and I often think when I see for example, the testimonies in the Shoah Foundation, which I look at regularly, I'm amazed, Dr. Eager, just how many times I hear about singing, talent contests, writing, poetry during the period of the ghettos and the camps, that sort of resilience that you're talking about. How can those stories help us to understand and remember the Holocaust, in addition to the horrors of it, the meaning of it from a sort of a living through perspective?
They give dimensions to that survival, right? Because we hear 6 million, and it's a number no one can imagine, and it's 6 million different stories. So when we hear about someone's experience and what they were thinking and what brought them through and what they created and the choices that you made, Dr. Eager, I really love your book. I'm with many, many people when I say that. But when we hear about that, then we learn something about the ability of human beings to overcome their surroundings, to overcome a terrible situation. And over the last year, with so many schools being remote and so many students' lives in uncertain conditions and flux, I know helped them to hear these types of stories of people dancing in the night, staying active in your mind.
No one could take that away from me. No one could ever murder my spirit. No. No people have as much power over me as I allow them. I'm not angry, because if I'm angry at you, I suffer, and I'm very selective who's going to get my anger. I tell you that much. By the way, I think it's good to say that anger is not a primary emotion. We either vent it, we suppress it. In Hungary, a woman said Don't breathe into your breast. Isn't that wise? Because many times cancer patients are the best patients. Don't tell my children I'm not feeling so well. They want the children not to feel any kind of pain. It's not a good idea at all. So I think it's very important that they vent it, suppress it, and I like to dissolve it.
I love what Freddie's saying here. Freddie Novin, that Dr. Eager is a prime example of the power of hope. Where does hope come into this? Some of the things that we see in the world today make us feel hopeless. Where do we get the hope from? Lauren, maybe first.
Well, stories like the ones that we're hearing right now give me a lot of hope. When I see kindness, acts of kindness all around me, it gives me hope. In Pittsburgh, I took a lot of hope from the response of the whole community after what happened at the Tree of Life, that everyone came out and supported the Jewish community, which I had never seen before in my life. It was a rare and very special thing. And now it gives me hope that we're working to pay that back and to keep that momentum going in our city and beyond, and make sure that people are kind to each other. People give me hope every day.
I'm seeing on the group here, we have Ivy Sheamus. I remember Ivy sharing with me. Ivy's from originally from Florida and was teaching in Stoneman Douglas on the 14th of February 3 years ago, and was teaching a class on the Holocaust at the time. And I remember, though, Ivy sharing with me, Lauren, how important it was that she and the survivors in Pittsburgh and the community that teach about the Holocaust come together in order to create that hope.
Yes.
That in a way that it comes when we stand together and when we share the same values. I was just thinking, Dr. Eager, I've talked to Ivy Sheamus a lot about the impact, and I met some of her students that were in that classroom that day who endured such terrible trauma, and saw the resilience of those young people and how they found purpose. Actually, strangely enough, I said to Ivy just a few weeks after, are you surprised that your young people that you were teaching about the Holocaust and how to apply it in the world are doing this march and are doing all these things? And she said, very school teacher, said, of course they're doing that. She said, I would have failed as a teacher if they didn't do that. That's what we spent the whole year trying to learn, is how do you apply your values in society? But it's also hard, isn't it, after trauma? How do those of us who have been traumatized get through that to a point where you can have hope? Because it's not always so easy, is it?
Why don't you look at your birth certificate? Mm-hmm. Does it say there is a guarantee? There is certainty? No. There is probability, because what I think, I create. Never give up hope, ever. There is hope in hopelessness. There is light after the darkness. I think people talk about when there is a lot of rain, that after the rain comes the rainbow. All I could do is think myself, when I survive today, tomorrow I'm gonna see my boyfriend. Tomorrow, I was never ever allowing anybody to do anything, and I had to learn to endure suffering. And when you suffer, you become stronger. I'm not a strong woman. I am a woman of strength. That's that little girl there. Look at her. She is giving and giving and giving of herself. A true survivor. Lauren, you truly are totally committed for the betterment of mankind. and love can conquer all. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. You are my very beautiful child who celebrates as I do. I owe it to my parents that they didn't die in vain.
Yeah. Dr. Eger, I'm seeing a question from Miriam Kirshner, who wants to know, did you continue to dance after liberation, and did you make it to Palestine?
Unfortunately, we fled and we ended up in Vienna. And I was in communication with my great friend, whose husband became a high-ranking officer in Israel. And she told me that they're living in a tent, and if I have a chance not to come, my little 1.5-year-old girl, to Israel. And that's how I ended up, and that's how I learned the boogie woogie, because I was liberated by the 71st Infantry, and I met one of the wonderful survivors who told me that he was part of the 71st Infantry. And actually, I got a letter, and a wonderful general called me one day, would I please come to Colorado and talk about post-traumatic stress disorder? And I made a deal, and I came there, and guess what? I saw 71 everywhere, not realizing that's the home of the 71st Infantry. And when I told them without that uniform, and yes, I continue dancing. I do that with my patients because they take a journey with me that we are grieving, feeling, and healing. Jewish people have a Shoah, but the Torah said after 1 year, leave the dead alone. No, I never forget what happened, It's just really, no, not at all. When I was in a Jewish school, children were spitting at us. They called me a Christ killer. They also did when in Germany, we walked from one city to another as the Russians came and the Americans came. And believe me, I never knew from 1 minute to the next, as we don't know now, as we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Lauren, when we have these experiences, that particularly when we're being attacked, I'm seeing somebody, we just heard there, Dr. Eger talking about the fact she was attacked as a Christ killer. When you're attacked for your identity, that the instinct is to sort of turn in on oneself and protect oneself. How do we get to the point where we have the ability or the strength to be able to still look out and to make relationships across the very boundaries or the chasms of identity that might otherwise separate us?
We have to do it, right? So I like that question a lot, because this is really what we're doing out of the Holocaust Center of Pittsburgh, in addition to all of our work in Holocaust education, which is still, at our core. We are doing that. We're building relationships with communities of difference. We're making an effort even to highlight the people who once upon a time might have said things that were anti-Semitic, but now feel very differently. I feel really strongly that we won't get anywhere. I always say we can't fight this from a Jewish bunker, and we must counter anti-Semitism because it's all around us. I talked to a school principal today at a middle school. They found swastikas in the boys' restroom, in the girls' restroom. They don't know who drew them, and they're figuring out what can we do. Then I heard from another community member, similar problem at a school. It's all around us, and we can keep talking to each other about it, which helps to some extent, but we're not really going to get anywhere until we're willing to have those riskier conversations, put ourselves out there. I can do that. I'm from a place of safety, so I'm safe enough to do that, especially from my own home right now. But reach out to people. And you'll find that you have so much in common, right? We have so much more in common than will ever divide us. We have a lot to overcome, though. So, I mean, I don't want to sound like, oh, it's easy. No, of course it isn't easy. It's very hard. It's the work of a lifetime for many people.
It's interesting. I'll tell you a little story while we're here. The Shoah Foundation today takes testimonies of people, obviously, who survived the Holocaust and genocides other than the Holocaust, but we also take testimonies of anti-Semitism that happened currently. And that includes people that maybe were anti-Semites at one point or have stepped in to try and prevent it, not because they are Jewish and being attacked, but maybe because they aren't Jewish and see the attack and want to actually help. One story for you, that somebody we interviewed recently. You'll remember there was a shooting in Copenhagen a few years ago. First of all, a free speech event was shot at. And then later in the evening, the gunman showed up at the synagogue and tried to attack a bat mitzvah celebration. And the security guard on this synagogue door lost his life, gave his life to save the children inside. The next morning, people came and they laid flowers around the synagogue, and one couple came down to lay flowers. In fact, it was the wife's birthday. And the husband said, should we take your flower? I got you flowers, but maybe we should take them to the synagogue. So they went to the synagogue, and a gentleman came out wearing a yarmulke. The couple were obviously Muslim. She was wearing a hijab. And the gentleman from the synagogue went out and he said to them, thank you for coming here today. It means a lot that you're here. The Muslim couple went home. He was very surprised that somebody had thanked him for coming to the synagogue, got on Facebook and said, that's surprising. I thought I would be chased away. So he decided he wanted to try and create a peace ring around the synagogue. He went to the police to ask for permission. The police said, sorry, this is a crime scene. You're not bringing a group of Muslims down to a crime scene where a Muslim terrorist just, shot at people. He learned that the Jewish Film Festival was being closed. So he called the director of the film festival and said, can I help? And she said, well, do you want to see a movie? Because we're ending the film festival tonight. And he said, okay, here's the deal. For every Jewish person you find to come to the film festival, I'll find a Muslim person to go with them and protect them. So they went to the movies together. As it happens, this young man was Palestinian. And now he's sitting in a movie theater with a group of Jews watching a movie about the founding of the state of Israel. He said, when I go to my grandmother's house in Ramallah, he said, I look at Israel and I just see the enemy. And he said, there we were, friends. 2 days later, he gets his permit, and he brings together Jews, Christians, and Muslims, and they surround the synagogue, and he creates that peace ring. His name is Nidal. I strongly advise you go to the Shoah Foundation website and watch it, because I think that it came to mind, Lauren, because of what both you and Dr. Eager were saying just now, which is it's in the strength of coming together and not seeing the differences and the anger and the hatred, but what we can share together. And so I just wanted to share that little story with you.
Oh, that's beautiful.
He's our guy. People like that we need more of, huh?
Absolutely.
We're all sisters and brothers. We can empower each other with our differences.
Yes. Freddie Novin is also saying, in the light of today's news of the George Floyd case, that the young bystander who videotaped the brutality helped to create justice and end discrimination. And it's interesting how, I think what we're talking about here together is that we all have a small role to part, but when we all play that part, we can create a society which is so much stronger, because we are the sum of our parts. And I want to thank you for both being on today. We have just a couple more moments before we start to wrap up. So if anybody's got any last questions, I see lots of compliments, by the way.
Lovely.
We've got questions, but lots of compliments. Yeah. People saying how much they really appreciate your resilience, Dr. Eager, and for also writing your books. People are reading your books, so that's a good sign. Hopefully they'll keep doing that. And to thank you for being on today at a very long day by the sound of things.
It is, and I'm going to...
So we'll just close now. Just one more question for you both. Dr. Eager, if you were to leave us with a message having seen what we saw today with those beautiful artworks and the resilience of your own life, what would you leave us with to think about as we go into the world, which has many forms of hatred, and yet benefits from the beauty of the things that we create? What would your message be to us?
Well, number one is that I am a very proud Jew because my ancestors were slaves. They didn't have it as good. And then they worked on the desert for some years, and they never gave up. And I carry that blood. And while I carry that blood, I'm going to tell you that none of the positive psychology, none of the positive does any good unless it's followed with a positive action. I thank you very much, my precious, precious Laura, for being the ambassador for peace and goodwill.
And Lauren, as we wind up this program, you've been involved with the Tree of Life program with Jackie Gamache now for some time. Why are you involved in this, and what do you hope that it will achieve and that we will achieve through it?
Make more beautiful art, for one thing. Study and appreciate the art that was created during the Holocaust under circumstances that we can't even imagine. And just recognize that, just as Dr. Eager says, we have it within ourselves to create beauty and to choose hope and to choose to forgive. And this is what I see coming out of this project. I love how it was inspired by Jackie Gamache's granddaughter, and we hear voices of the generations. Everything about this is a beautiful idea, and it spans the globe. So I hope we're just getting started with this.
Well, thank you. I want to just thank Jackie Gamache for her inspiration, for bringing us together in this program. We owe you, Jackie Gamache, for that, because at a time when we've all been a little low, this has been a really inspiring program. I have an affection for the Lawrence Family JCC because when you were program director there, you accidentally introduced me to my wife. So thank you for that. And I accidentally went on a number of dates at the Lawrence Family JCC because I got dragged along to your programs by my now wife. And I had many happy hours there. So I'm looking forward, Ryan, to returning to San Diego. You won't believe this, but Dr. Eager and I have never met in person. I don't know how that's possible because we've been circling in the same world for a while. So as soon as this darn pandemic's out of the way, I'm coming down to San Diego, Dr. Eager, so that we can spend some quality time together. And then we should go on a little date ourselves to the Lawrence Family JCC and hang out there with everybody else. It would be wonderful.
With me.
With Jackie.
I'm going to go on a date, the two of you, with me and with Lauren.
Yes. I will.
Okay. And maybe Ryan. Okay, we can expand that.
I think we just created the next program, Ryan. So we'll leave it to you to bring us together. Thank you so much for having us today.
I didn't want to speak, but before our time together, I was watching the news, and the words that I'm going to share with you now are not mine. They were told today on the TV station. And I will not identify the speaker. I think it's not the purpose. If anybody asks for your help, just go and do it. It takes courage, but it takes an immediate action to do something. Don't think too long. It is an action of moral courage. Step into the light. Again, these are not my words, and I would say life matters and lives matter. And I want to say thank you to all of you. And big kisses, Edith, Lauren, thank you. Stephen, I adore you. And thank you, Ryan, and thank you all.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you for bringing us all together today.
Stephen, thank you. Thank you. This was really a wonderful conversation to be a part of. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Dr. Eager, Ryan. Amazing. Can't wait to see you in San Diego.
This
In
was
person.
beautiful. Thank you, Dr. Eager. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Stephen and Lauren, wonderful conversation, wonderful program. Until that big date night at the JCC that I think Jackie is now arranging, I'm sure. We'll see you there. The next event that is part of the We Are the Tree of Life is on Tuesday, May 25th at 11 a.m. You saw Tammuz Dubnov's dancing in the video earlier. It will be his dances of the Holocaust. There will be much more information about that coming soon. I know many of you have asked. This program right here is being recorded. It will be available for everybody. We have all of your email addresses because you all had to register to get here. So you will hear from us. You will receive a link as to how you can watch this again, share it with anybody whom you'd like to share it with. So thank you all again for being with us. This was truly a wonderful kickoff. Jackie, Stephen, Lauren, Dr. Eager, everybody, thank you very much for being a part of this, and have a good evening.
Thank you so much, everyone.